Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak right here on Citizen TV. We continue looking at the issues behind the headlines. Of course, just before the break, we were talking about this ongoing investigation into the killing of Sharon Otieno, the 26-year-old Rongo University student whose body was found at Kondera Forest in Homa Bay. Kodera Forest in Homa Bay. Yeah. Let's now take a look at the other headlines. And today, of course, the fuel crisis still headlining. Uhuru back amid crisis talks on fuel. That's a big one on the Standard. The president's return has been eagerly awaited by Kenyans who expect that he will trigger suspension of the 16% value-added tax on petroleum products that resulted in a countrywide fuel crisis last week. At least as we speak, fuel is back. Filling stations have the commodity, so people are not experiencing a shortage as such. But the fuel prices are still high, despite a High Court order suspending the VAT last week, pending hearing of the case, I think, which should continue this week. ERC says they are yet to receive that order, so fuel prices have not changed. But the president is back, and the expectation is that, yes, he'll come back and simply do away with the VAT. But is that the reality? Truth of the matter is, and according to CS Treasury, he's had a series of meetings with the parliamentary leadership. Last week, sources from that meeting were talking about a list of proposals by the CS, including reduction of that VAT on fuel from 16% to 12%, including doing away with some of the free services offered by government, like free secondary, free primary education, free maternal health care. Listening to the Senate Majority Leader yesterday, Kipchumba Murkomen, and I think it's on the news today as well, he addressing a public gathering somewhere, he said, yes, if at all we do away with that 16%, we should say that, yes, we do not want these roads, we do not want these water dams, we do not want this or the other. It may sound like a threat that, yes, if we do not abide by this 16% VAT, we as Kenyans should be ready to lose some of these things. Is that how we should be looking at it?
Well, I think when I was here last, I said that there is a problem with our budgeting. And somebody was showing me in our budget committee, somebody who was writing that Millie Odhiambo confesses that they steal money through budget. So really also people's understanding and perception. Yeah. I know English is came with the Queen's, it's a Queen's language, and it came with the ship and by air. So sometimes perception may be different. But what I can say is that what I've seen Murkomen talk about and what I've seen Tuju talk about tells you the mindset of the government, that they are not willing to let go of these fuel prices. They are willing to let Kenyans suffer, and then give this threat that it's the money, or either the money or the box. So either the tax stays, or you know,
or you lose free primary education.
Or you lose free primary education, or you lose what. To be honest, if you actually picked that budget, if I remember that budget well, there's a lot more that I would remove than CDF, than the money going to governors, because these are now you can see Honorable Tuji is actually playing politics, because he's saying, you know, since MPs are the ones that are really speaking, because they are people's representatives, we are the ones who feel the heat when the public is not happy, so we will voice the concerns of the public. So they are saying, they are trying to turn the heat back to us by saying you shouldn't voice what the public is saying. You should, you know, kind of stream along with the government. Otherwise, we will reduce funding to CDF. Otherwise, we'll reduce funding to governors. And Murkomen is speaking kind of the same language. I can tell you, I sit in the budget committee. If we sat down, and we are meeting from today, and if we looked at that budget, there are items that would remove that does not require us to remove budgetary allocation to free primary education or healthcare or any other thing. There are other things that can wait, like the Oshanga project can wait. Those are things that can wait. Like other projects I don't want to mention, because then I will be told I am...
Why do you think they're going... why do you think that the CS could even threaten things like free maternal health care?
Well, it's basically what I'm telling you, that the people who have come out very strongly are members of parliament, because we are the ones who feel the heat as people's representatives. When I go to my constituency, the first thing they tell you, Mheshimiwa, go and raise this thing. with Parliament. We are feeling it's too much. We can't handle it. And me as a representative, I will exactly say that. I will say it in the media. I will say it in Parliament. I will say it in funerals. I'll say it to whoever cares to listen. Because that's what I have been sent by my constituents to say. Now, what these guys are doing, the executive is trying to twist us by saying, okay, since you're saying that and you're agreeing with the public, then let us hit where it hurts. Where it hurts, it's free maternal care. Where it hurts is free primary education. Where it hurts is this. There are other projects in that budget that can go without, which the public cannot feel. And they don't have to go completely. We can just delay them. Yeah.
There are things that are not necessary at this time.
Even in our own budgets in the families, we prioritize. There are things I will do this year. There are things I'll do next year. I've been going around in my own constituency doing what you call a needs assessment. I did it the last time. I do it now. It takes me almost a year when I'm doing it because I go village to village. And when I go, I cannot tell my constituency that I'll do all these things for you at once. But I'll tell them, in this school, I can only do one class. In this school, because I have almost 150 schools. Out of my 150 schools, if I were to give each of them a class, that's 1 million times 150. That's 150 million. I don't have that sort of money. So what do? Prioritize. So what we are doing is we are very careless in the manner. I know some people are challenging us that how come you are the Parliament that does. Yes, we have a role in budgeting, but then there's a very heavy executive presence.
But don't you think then it's up to Parliament to actually call out the executive, because these threats are just getting too much, and it says a lot about a leadership that resorts to threatening the public, that if you do not allow us this 16% VAT, we'll take away free maternal health care, we'll take away free education, we'll take away this and the other. Don't you think your role as a parliamentarian is to actually call out the executive and say, no, that will not happen?
We have already made that pronouncement by doing amendments on the scrapping, postponing this VAT.
It's just a postponement.
VAT. And I think what the government is doing is, you know, fear is like a small stream. If encouraged, then it graduates into a very huge river, and it drains away the good thoughts that a person is having. So what the Tuju and the rest of the people are doing is that they really want to threaten Kenyans and the institutions that are opposed to these fuel taxes into dropping their hard stance and accepting the status quo. But what we are saying is, first, it's wrong for a government not to respect a court order. We have a court order issued by a court in Bungoma suspending this VAT, and the Parliament has already pronounced itself. When Parliament speaks, these are Kenyans speaking. The only institution that speaks on behalf of Kenya is the National Assembly. And we have made it clear that at the time where these VAT were proposed, I think at that time the MPs thought that by today we will be producing our own gas and oil, which has not been the case. So we were actually right to postpone it for further, you know, until that time when we will have a certain number of things happening. And I want to agree with the Honorable Millie Odhiambo. When we went to primary school, at least more than 20 years ago, we were taught of basic human needs: food, clothing, and shelter. And the role of government is to make life easier, not difficult. And if you want to get more money as a country, you stimulate the economy. And we talk of agriculture being the backbone of our economy. So you stimulate agricultural production. Inject money into the sugar sector so that the sugar farmers can get rich, they have money getting from the sugar. Those who plant maize, you inject money in the maize, you manage it very well, they have the money. Then you can begin to tax. But you have, in a scenario where the sugar economy is dead, agriculture, the sugarcane farmers have not been paid money, then you are increasing tax. So meaning that you have systems that are going to make Kenyans more poorer than they are. And if you look at, Honorable Millie will agree with me, when I looked at that budget, for example, even in the education sector, in my own country, I have Kibabi University, which is a very new university. It was getting 30 million. So if a new university can get 30 million, but these universities that have been around for over a decade, getting 300 million, 400 million, what is the equity? I think if you go to distribute this money equitably, then you will be sure you don't need this 12% VAT.
You talk about the budget, and of course it's known how much money Treasury was hoping to raise by the 16% VAT. And you say you've seen that budget. It should be a public document. There's nothing really to hide. There's no secret in the budget. Why are you not coming out and saying, no, if at all you take away this vote for this particular issue, as you mentioned, Ushanga, why are you as parliamentarians not coming out and saying the truth, that this can actually be sorted, that 70 billion you would have gotten, why don't you just reduce this on this particular vote? Well,
I'm not saying that the Ushanga project is bad, because it's actually a project that will help women. They are making beads and everything. But I'm saying where we have to compare between healthcare and Ushanga, then postpone Ushanga and give healthcare. You know, those are the kind of things that we are talking about. But we've spoken about this. We raised it at the budget committee. Usually when we sit with the CS Treasury as budget committee, we will sit almost 2 days because we often don't agree on issues. But then, you know, sometimes people make things very simplistic when you say, oh, then Parliament should. Parliament is not sort of a homogeneous body that then, you know, we all react the same way to stimuli. We are, you know, we have certain divisions, political divisions. But the concept and when the push comes to shove, then we are that even a person like you, as a member of parliament, you've not really come out vocally to actually challenge some of the statements made by the CS. I have. Here. In this same show.
But reluctantly, because you said I don't want to mention other things. But isn't it?
Well, very soon I'll mention those other things, because they are also, I've said it here before, that there are actually budget lines that I know I've received a flag from my own budget committee for saying this, that you know, there are things in that budget which we do not necessarily need now.
Don't you think it's important for members of the public to know?
There is duplication of, you know, of efforts. We are giving funds to institutions to do work that other institutions are doing, because some of those projects are seen as politically correct. I don't want to raise too much whatever. But I think those are things.
Because the issue
I am giving executive a chance to look at those things themselves.
Members of the public now are being subjected to fear because of these threats that if at all you do not agree with this 16% VAT, you will lose free primary education. If you tell any parent that, they'd say, okay, fine, let's do it with the VAT. But don't you think it's upon you to actually assure the public that, no, you don't have to fear. There are other things that can be done. It doesn't have to be the 16% VAT.
There is something which we are also forgetting as Kenyans. The problems we are in now that forces the government to tax Kenyans more are as a result of bad management decisions by the CS Treasury. We have too much debts that we have to continue paying. And I think when NASA was raising a red flag that Treasury had put Kenyans into too much debts, now we are believing what they were saying, you know. Because if you go into these bonds, you know, borrowing, you borrow with the hope that you'll use this money wisely to make life better, that to relieve Kenyans from these huge taxes, you know. So, and I think we must not hide the truth. We should say the truth. The problem that we are in as a country, we've been put here by one man called Henry Rotich. Because when you are in charge of Treasury, you are the chief financial advisor to the cabinet, because you understand financial matters. So some of the financial decisions that the Treasury has taken are the ones that has put up into this mess. And it's not the business of Parliament to now say where we are going to fund this money from. It's the business of the Treasury and the executive to come up with a new proposal on how they're going to fund the budget.
The National Assembly should be right at the center of the budget-making process.
Yes, we are. But you remember the budget itself is originated from the executive.
Absolutely.
So it's not us as Parliament that sits and writes these things. So when this budget comes to us, then we still have, you know, different ministries coming to present. Instead of them coming to say reduce here, they actually add more to what is already there. So there's also a discordance within the executive, which we have raised. Because we are saying, you know, once you sit as the cabinet, then you don't need to have these other guys coming with other, you know, sort of requirements on top of what they put pressure now on the budget committee to include, which sometimes the budget committee does, because some of those issues you can see skewed, you know, development especially. I mean, not development, but skewed allocations. So sometimes then they, you know, overlook the.
Yes, but don't you think that probably?
Treasury.
Don't you think that probably the kind of dalliance we're seeing between NASA and Jubilee, so that even your allegiances in Parliament are not so clear, that could have affected even the kind of scrutiny that was accorded to the budget appropriations?
I
that some of these things just were rubber stamped.
No, we didn't. We didn't rubber stamp. I can tell you, maybe, perhaps one of the things we should do next time is invite the media to sit through. And when we sit through, as I've told you, we sit for days when we are dealing with budget and we interrogate and we don't rubber stamp. But it is a negotiation that even up to the last minute, you see the CS bringing amendments, and there's a lot of lobbying, individual lobbying, for some of those amendments to pass.
Yes.
So it's not just an issue.
Because the amount...
I can tell you, contrary to actually what the public says, this dalliance of NASA and Jubilee is actually why we are discussing this, because this dalliance for the first time saw the House voting almost in one voice. And I remember one of the members, as we were walking out, was saying, wow, if it weren't for the handshake, we would not have passed some of the things that we passed on the finance bill. There are things that we passed which would not have passed, because now we tend to, you know, it's almost like the Kibaki time, and I was very, I was glad to sit, you know, in that parliament of the Kibaki time. And I remember one time we were called by the president himself, Honorable Kibaki, and the Prime Minister, Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, and they summoned the entire parliament. And it was something that I think it was the interest rate capping. And the entire parliament said, we respect you very much, President, we respect you very much, but we will only do what the public wants.
Do you think if at all the President Uhuru Kenyatta sends back this bill with a memorandum, that Parliament can actually marshal the two-thirds majority to defeat it again?
That depends on individual MPs.
Because now you say there was a lot of
That's
unanimity.
what I'm telling you. It depends on individual MPs. And
no,
how you are
looking at how you, look at how you...
At that point, I can assure you, we were almost unanimous.
Do you think that can happen again, if at all the...
Absolutely. And I want to remind you, Kenyans, that if you sum up the amount of money that is suspected to have lost for the last 5 years in NYS, in the health sector, including the one that are being held in some individual bank accounts. There is an employee of a county government of Nairobi that had millions of money in his account. It was frozen. I don't know what happens there. The amount of money we have lost in Ruaraka land, the amount of money we have lost in this sugar madness, then you will tend to think that... because when this money was lost, it appeared like... the ministries was okay, NYS was okay. They were funding their things very well. Nobody was complaining that we don't have money here. It means, therefore, that the amount of money that we allocate on some specific votes are exaggerated. So I still believe that the government has enough money, will get enough money from Kenyans in the name of taxes and fund their activities without necessarily
withdrawing free primary education
and the free health care, and without even reducing...
Actually,
70 billion shillings is the highest amount. There's some who say 70 billion is the amount that would be raised from this tax. Do you think 70 billion is something that can be fixed through the budgetary appropriations?
It can be fixed through two ways. One, our appetite for borrowing is too much. Let's stop borrowing. Because as we are dealing with this issue, we are still out borrowing. Because why are we here? We are not even talking why we are here in the first place. Because we are over borrowing as a country. So let's stop borrowing. Let's start from there. Number two, let's deal with the issue of corruption. as Honorable Didmas has said. Because why are we talking about how we are not managing when there is too much money flowing all over the country? There are people, you know, we are talking about lifestyle audit, and yet the only people we are dealing with lifestyle audit is, you know, down here, when we should be looking up here. Where is all this money that is floating and flowing all over the country? Where is that money coming from? We are not broke. Yeah? We are not broke if you see the amount of money that is just roaming all over the country. Yes. So we cannot then make the ordinary Kenyans suffer when there is money floating all over. Do a lifestyle audit. I know, for instance, that we are finding leaders that were moving. We know our salaries, we know our means, we know people who do business and those who don't. And if you are moving suddenly and you have not been having money, and then suddenly you are going around doing fundraisers where for every weekend you are doing a fundraiser and you are raising $500,000 or giving $500,000 as a member of parliament. Really? Wow. We are not that foolish. Where is that money coming from? Let the, you know, the DPP be serious about, you know, some of these issues. Me, if I do a fundraiser where I raise $500,000, I'll take another 1 month to recoup. You, where are you getting that? Especially if you don't have, if you don't have businesses, where you are doing that. And also, Mheshimiwa, I think the government should not, they should understand the economy of Kenyans. And if you want to assist Kenyans, you bring a system that will target the Mama Mboga, that will target, those are the people who constitute at least 75% of the Kenyan population. And also when you are doing budgeting, you are proposing projects, there is no way Kenya can be like the UK in 10 years. I mean, we tend to equate ourselves to countries like Singapore, Malaysia, that we want to jump very, very steps. I don't think if we Kenyans was ripe to have these things of standard gauge railway. I think it's something. It's good, but it's not at this time when the people have no money, when all the economy they depend on is crumbling. Look at now, we've standard gauge railway was overcosted. We have not yet, you know, already it's even making losses. Instead of now focusing, because it's here with us, what are we doing? Now we are putting other roads to compete it. Because when you have these roads, it will kill. You're talking about the expressway, the proposed expressway. Yeah, it's likely to kill the standard gauge railway. So we must also think comprehensively as a nation. Yeah. There's something wrong. There's almost a sense of looting. Let's get in and grab as much as we can before 2022. Wow. There's a sense of grabbing at the expense of the country. And President Uhuru Kenyatta is back in the country. He came in yesterday evening, and of course the biggest expectation is that he's here to resolve the fuel crisis. What will he do? Will he sign the proposed amendments with the suspending the 16% VAT, postponing it for another 2 years? Will he return that bill back to Parliament with a memorandum? If at all he does that, will MPs be able to marshal the 2/3 required to actually defeat that? Will he let that bill stay and allow it to lapse after 2 weeks, then it automatically becomes law? Because I think we're already in the second week. Yeah. These are just some of the headlines we're looking at, and of course that big investigation with regard to the murder of Sharon Otieno. We've come to the end of our news review. I'd like to give my panelists an opportunity to give their final remarks, plus, being a Monday, probably help us understand what kind of headlines are we going to see this week. Is it simply no fuel crisis and Sharon, and these are the same headlines we had last week? Should we expect this, or is there something else you know, because you come across a lot of things, that we probably should expect? Let's start with you. I just want to make it clear to Kenyans that myself as a member of parliament, as a representative of the people, I'm not going to accept anything less other than dropping the VAT tax on fuel. Because we are here with the one business, to make the lives of Kenyans easy. And I don't think if it will be good for this country that we can go out of our way to overtax the already overtaxed Kenyan population. And the president must sign that the VAT amendments, which we as parliament we approved a few weeks ago.
And as a father of this country, he must come out and speak. At least I'm happy that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga had spoken about this in favor of Kenyans, and the spirit of handshake and the little respect to Kenyans, that Kenyans don't want any extra tax on fuel, and the president must listen to the voice of Kenyans.
Thank you.
On my part, I will stand with the people of Suba North, from where I withdraw my mandate. And the people of Suba North are saying they are overtaxed, the fuel prices are too high, women are no longer able to afford to cook. So I will stand to be counted. If the president returns this with a memorandum, I will be part of the numbers counted as part of the 2/3. If you are a member of parliament, it's no longer about which side or what pressure you are facing. It's about what your people want. And elections is about your people. It's always about your people, because all politics is local. And again, in terms of what are we likely to see, yesterday I listened to the DPP on news, and he said we are going to do arrests, whether it includes high-ranking people or not. So, and the governor of Migori has been mentioned as a person of interest. So I think what we are likely to see this week is a focus, a much greater focus on the role, if any, of the governor of Migori in relation to the death of Sharon.
Okay, that of course has to be left to the DPP and the DCI who are investigating that matter. It is still one of the big headlines. In as far as fuel is concerned, both my panelists say they are not for that VAT. And if it counts for anything, it should be noted that Millie Odhiambo is a member of ODM and Didmas Barasa is a member of Jubilee Party. Yes? Yeah. So if it's anything worth noting is that at least in as far as fuel prices are concerned, there's unanimity in Parliament. Well, that's where we wrap up our news review this morning. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Millie Odhiambo, MP Suba North, Didmas Barasa, MP Kimilili, helping us understand the issues behind the headlines this morning. Remember, Daybreak still continues. Do stand by for a lot more. The hashtag to use is Daybreak. Our Twitter handle is @CitizenTV Kenya. You can also text us on 22422. Let's take a break.